Free thinkers, we're free. Here's what we do. We can take some classes, affect the masses. There's no excuse. You've been loosed.
This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I am the host on this show, this podcast, From Destruction to Dignity. Clinical perspectives, spiritual truths. Tonight, we're going to be talking about something that truly, the magnitude of the destruction that can go on related to these dynamics that we're going to jump into tonight. There is such a dire need to encourage people to embrace their own dignity. And with this whole dynamic that we're going to dive into tonight, it's very serious. It ends up having an outflow of clinical perspectives because people are left absolutely ravaged, and the need for spiritual truths is deep and dire. Tonight, we're going to talk about, are you in a cult? Are you in a cult? I have been confronted with and interacting with people who have been dealing with and who have been ravaged by religious abuse, that they're trying to wrap their mind around the fact that this is what this really is. That, no, they didn't say that. No, that didn't happen to me. No, that's not happening to us. And the truth of the matter, precious people, I'm telling you, a lot of times what people are dealing with, it ends up being they are in a cult. So how will you know if you're in a cult? Sometimes it's just not easy to spot it. It really isn't, particularly if you're in it. A lot of cults, they don't go around wearing robes, and they don't live in communes. They don't have certain things written on them that you know for sure that this is what is going on. But most cult members, they don't even realize that it is a cult. It is important to be able to recognize patterns. Why does a cult even develop? Now, all of us have a desire to be accepted. No one really wants to be shunned. We have a desire to be accepted and to belong. When that desire to be accepted and to belong starts coupling itself with dynamics where there's a belief system of a group or of a leader or of a person that becomes unhealthy and dysfunctional, you might need to take a closer look at that. Because sometimes people have a fear of punishment, of even having social isolation. And the beliefs and the dynamics that they can have presented to them in a religious setting, it can become superior. So that's kind of setting the backdrop of why people can even become vulnerable for something to develop into a cult. So, what differentiates people from gathering, people from having the same common beliefs, to it segueing into a cult? The key is there's a great devotion to a person, a human being, an idea, an object, a movement, or usually at the core of it, it's a person that the focus hones in on. Now, there are a lot of cults existing today. Actually, when I was reading about it and just trying to, my opinion really doesn't matter. My opinion does not matter. When you're talking about certain things, it's just like I can give my opinion. All of us got an opinion. But there are about 10,000 cults. But see, some gatherings and some groups, it's not harmful. It's benign. Let's say, for example, you've got I've heard people say, well, the Grateful Dead, that's a cult. Well, those people, they aren't bashing you if you just say, well, I'm gonna go a different way. I want to listen to somebody else different. I want to listen to another rock group. I want to. They're not trying to control what you talk about. They're not trying to control what you read. They're not trying to control what you think. They're not trying to control what you do. Control and manipulation is at the core of the dynamic that comes through a given person in a cult. David Koresh, i.e. There are patterns. Let's look at some patterns. Are you in a cult? Listen, the leader of a cult, they become the ultimate authority. What does Bishop so-and-so, Apostle so-and-so, Prophet so-and-so, Doctor so-and-so, CEO so-and-so, President so-and-so, a cult. People can't think for themselves. They're not able to use logical deductive reasoning to come to their own conclusion. So the leader, the person, that personality, that person becomes the ultimate authority. And here's another one. There is no room for constructive criticism. It's probably a cult if they cannot take any kind of feedback. Cults begin with a charismatic leader who claims to have supreme knowledge. Supreme knowledge. It's one thing to have knowledge. You have bright, brilliant leaders, politicians. Some of them are bright. A lot of them, they have high IQs. I can sit here and name the IQ. I'll tell you what, an IQ that's been associated with a given person from definitely the last 12 years, because I studied it. I wanted to understand it. I used to give IQ tests. I think they're quite fascinating. But they don't claim, these brilliant political leaders, by and large, they don't claim to have supreme knowledge. Cult leaders convince people. They convince the people that end up yoking themselves to them to forfeit their critical thinking. They don't want you to have critical thinking ability. And what do you get in exchange for not having critical thinking ability? They give you a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. It doesn't matter what the evidence starts showing. You can start seeing patterns that are concerning to you. But when it leads back to that person always being right and you can't ask any questions and people start justifying their misdeeds or conduct that's questionable, and any kind of constructive criticism is forbidden, it's probably a cult. Usually cult leaders are dynamic, they're charismatic, they're convincing. Do you know why? They have an ultimate goal, and the goal is to brainwash their members. They end up being brainwashed, and here's a common characteristic. Hear me now. Hear me now. They are focused on acquiring monetary power that's to their advantage. Monetary power that's to their advantage. Everything is about getting money to them, money to them, money to them, money to the organization, to the point that they're not really concerned about your needs. It's all about money. How they're going to feed the organization. They will siphon money off of their members relentlessly. And they're not really, if you get in dire straits, they're not really there to really help you monetarily. Your money has gone towards making sure they have all of this. And listen, I believe in ministers being taken care of. Pastors should have a good salary. But I'm talking about a dynamic where people become brainwashed with this. And you start noticing, it's like, well, what I'm giving in the, for some people, I'm giving tithes and offering, but I got to give here for that. I got to give to them for this. I got to give to them, to them, to them, to them, to them. There's a strict adherence to their teaching and to their doctrine. And I'm going to tell you another characteristic that can happen when a cult is going on. The cult leaders can actually, and I've seen it, they segue, and I've heard about it, and I've read about it, and I've researched about it, and I've seen it, where they develop and have narcissistic personality traits at a minimum, and sometimes a full-blown disorder. Narcissistic personality, man, it is deep, and it is hard, and it is cutthroat, and it can get vicious. And I've seen people also exhibit behavior that I'm going, wait a minute, that's psychosis. In that they are out of touch with reality, as evidenced by delusions. They can be paranoid delusions. A huge one is grandiose delusions. Hear what they're saying. Pay attention. Lean in to what's being said, because it's like, are they out of touch with reality? There's a push that you can only study our stuff. Reading, studying, anything else is pretty much forbidden. And there can be a trajectory and a flow to get everybody on the same track. We've all got to study just this, or you have not arrived. Cults view critical thinking as an infectious disease. They don't want people to think critically. And there's every effort to suppress it. So therefore, you can't ask questions. You are a threat if you start asking questions. You're a threat if you start doubting what you're hearing. And doubting members are encouraged to isolate themselves from other influences and to focus only on the doctrine of the cult. Criticism, constructive criticism, saying anything is forbidden. You are marked if you ask questions. You can end up being you're an apostate. You're suppressive. You know, watch them, watch him, watch her. If you decide to leave, the group will often delegitimize former members for leaving the group. They just do. They will be bashed from pulpits, even by name, even by circumstance, that they're talking about those people and what's being said. Look, it's one thing. It's just like when you leave a job. Look, we appreciate you serving. Sorry to see you go. I hope things work out for you. If it doesn't, just know that you've got a home. You can always come back. We're sorry to see you go. God bless you. Thank you for the support that you gave us while you're here. When you hear the opposite of that, it's probably a cult, because they will demonize people from in meetings, in gatherings, from pulpits. Why? Because they left. They left. Imagine that. In this constitutional republic of the United States, where we, the people, have rights. We have constitutional rights to move and to make decisions. And this flag represents us being Americans. And this seal represents we the people, and somebody that works for we the people. And and when you have a religious organization, they're supposed to be serving the people. Are they supposed to be compensated if that's their full-time position and profession and what they're doing? Yes, but I'm telling you what, when that segues into abusing and bashing people, there's a problem. There's a pattern that most often and quite frequently is associated with an organization and a group being a cult. That cult, eventually, it will segue into them being the ultimate authority on truth. Ultimate. There's no room for any critical thinking. It perpetuates a false narrative that former members are deceived, they're proud, they're immoral, or they might be lazy. They're just lazy. They don't want it hard enough. They don't want to take courses. They're not committed. What do you mean? What are the dynamics that people have going on in their lives that's not what they can do? And moreover, that's not what God called them to do. So why would they be treated or talked about disparagingly, in a disparaging way or manner? Because they're not going to take the course. They're not going to do what others are doing. Maybe God hadn't told them to do that, but it's to be expected that that's what you do. Patterns. Oh, they shame people. Any religious organization that shames people in the name of God, I'm talking about shame, slaughter, slaughter from pulpits. Those are patterns. Those are characteristics of a cult. They see often, I've done a lot of research on this, because it's like, God, I don't want to get up there and talk about what I think. I'm talking about patterns. Definitely consistent patterns. They see anyone who left, that if you talk to that person that left, they see often that you're going to be infected by that person. And that person that left may have the truth of freedom. Let's start there. The group and the leaders, and you just see them scurrying around. They're paranoid of the outside world getting a glimpse of what may go on. And they'll get there and they do damage control. This is not a cult. We're not a cult. But all these patterns that I've just laid out is what's being exhibited. Cults position themselves as a sole refuge. This is where you have to go. You can't go anywhere else. They thrive on persecutory complexes. And that becomes a huge characteristic of the leader, the main leader. and those that circle their wagons. That shame cycle, that's a huge one. Somebody leaves, I'm a supervisor. When people leave, we have a going away party. God bless you. If they're good and say, honey, if it don't work out, you know you can come back here. And people do. People do that with churches, healthy churches. But these organizations, they shame you. Who's going to go back to a place that shamed you and beat you up and slaughtered your family? If you've got to have a specific group of people to feel worthy and loved and to feel sufficient, and you can't get it from anyone else except them, chances are that's very characteristic of a cult. Cult leaders they trap people. They like to trap people in shame cycles. How do they do it? By imposing abnormally strict codes on people. Certain things you can't do. You can't say that. You can't do this. You can't go there. One that I heard someone say to someone is, my sheep are not going to go over there and help somebody. My sheep? You don't know. Who do you own? Who do you own? The leader becomes the mediator of worthiness and the foundation of members' self-esteem. Sometimes the leaders in cults will often present themselves as being absolutely divine. I've heard some things come out of people's mouth. I was like, huh? What did they say? Huh? Hark. There is a propensity towards thinking that the leaders or the leader is usually a person. That's a real key characteristic. It's a person. They are the standard. Wow. There's an indoctrination and a brainwashing that is perpetual. It goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And it's like, if you don't line up, something is wrong with you. Cults often see themselves as they are the only chosen ones. They are the ones that are enlightened. No one else has any insight. No one has the revelation that we have. They are, that place is the only elect place. I look at church like this. We all in the army. We just got different platoons. We got different platoons. Here's a huge one. You got to hear this. This is important. There is no financial transparency. They will not tell you. They will not get before the congregation within a given year, quarterly even, and say, hey, here's a handout. Here's where your monies have gone. There is no financial transparency. Do you know why? That is a huge flag, because cult leaders tend to live opulently while their followers are required to make financial sacrifices. True story. So, if we're talking about a church, are we feeding the hungry, clothing the naked? Are we visiting prisoners? And if we don't do it within that particular organization, do we show how your money went towards doing those things that Jesus said we're supposed to do? And we'll get offended if you ask about the money. That's my money. That's your money. That's our money. Should you know where your money goes? If you are a part of a religious organization, of course you would. Of course you should know. It's transparent. That's called accountability. Now, here's another huge one. They do secret rites. those rites, um, being baptized unto the organization. What are you talking about being baptized into the organization? What are you talking about? And give acronyms. You gonna get, are y'all signed up to get baptized unto, what? Matthew 28. If you're talking about a religious or Christian organization, for sure, Matthew 28 says that we're baptized unto the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In being baptized unto anything else, more than likely, there needs to be a consideration of this is a cult. It can get confusing. It can get bizarre. The dissonance that goes on is pretty serious. You can end up having cognitive dissonance because you get this belief system, and then you hear something and it shatters, it shakes this belief system that you've got, and you become anxious. You become depressed. There's a loyalty to an inner circle that if it's threatened or questioned, you're on the list. Listen, where do we go from here? If you say, gosh, I might be a part of a cult, pray. Ask God to give you peace. Ask God to lead you, guide you, direct you out of it. Because I'm telling you what, I believe a lot of them are going down. So you have to protect your safety. Why? Are your boundaries being violated? What are your boundaries? Where do you go? How do you get out? Work on your boundaries. Stay strong in your decision to leave. Sometimes I know people that have come out of situations, they are in therapy. They were messed up. They became anxious, depressed, fearful, overwhelmed because they were in a cult. And they didn't have the foundational, solid establishment of strategy, skills, and tools for wellness and recovery. And they just got shook up. They got traumatized. So what are your boundaries? If you decide you're going to leave, you stay strong. Get with people that are going to give you that freedom and support you. Remind yourself why you wanted to get away in the first place. You said, but listen, sometimes you just I'm not talking to anyone from there. You have to protect your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions, your intellect, your drive. What are your desires? Are you consumed with the desires of that leader? Can you not think for yourself? Do you have to have that leader telling you what you need to think? Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Stay strong in your decision. Be prayed up. Get around people that love you and that support you. There's some diabolical things going on out here. And some of these leaders and these organizations where they're siphoning money off of people for their sustenance and their existence and don't care anything about the members. And it's a lot of people that are hurting. So the establishment of these boundaries, you need a support system that's healthy. You need a support system that's healthy, that's away from those dysfunctional, imbalanced, unhealthy, sometimes diabolical, sometimes downright demonic people. As evidenced by what? We know what demonic activity and patterns look like? They don't glorify God. It doesn't exemplify love. It doesn't. God doesn't shame like that all the time. And then give me your money. Are you kidding me? Practice making your own decisions and work on rediscovering you. Rediscover you. Rediscover your personality. Develop you. Listen, we talked about, are you in a cult? That's a pattern of destruction, but God wants to take us to a point of dignity. Find out who you are and get set free. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
Education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation. A new